Never Finished by David Goggins. Picture this. A man in a sharp suit stands on stage, a gleaming medal hanging from his neck. Thousands of combat veterans are on their feet, applauding thunderously. He's just received the Americanism Award from the veterans of foreign wars, the same honor once given to Senator John McCain, one of his heroes. This should be his crowning moment, the ultimate validation of a life well lived. But here's the twist. Inside his head, he's completely lost. He feels like an imposter. For over an hour, sandwiched between his mother and uncle in the audience, his mind wasn't absorbing the glowing achievements being read from his resume. Instead, it was wandering through a dark labyrinth of memories. He's seeing himself as a terrified little boy, fists raining down from his own father. He's the only black kid in a small Indiana town, enduring racist taunts from classmates. He's cheating his way through school, paralyzed by learning disabilities that made him feel worthless and stupid. He's quitting military training because the water was just too terrifying. And then there's the man he became after that failure, nearly 300 pounds, spraying for cockroaches on the graveyard shift, his dreams evaporating like morning fog. The thought keeps looping, I shouldn't be here. The decorated Navy SEAL, the ultra-marathon legend, the guy who inspires millions, he started out, by his own reckoning, as a complete loser. When they finally announce his name, his mother has to nudge him back to reality. He walks to the microphone, still floating somewhere between his confusing present and his agonizing past. He tries to speak, to thank his grandfather, to thank his mother. But when he turns and looks at her, the memory of the moment that truly transformed his life crashes over him like a massive wave. Right there, in front of thousands of battle-hardened warriors, this icon of mental toughness closes his eyes and breaks down sobbing. That man is David Goggins, and his book, Never Finished, isn't really a hero's journey. It's something more fundamental and raw. It's about the relentless battle raging inside every single one of us, the war between who we are right now and who we're capable of becoming. Today we're diving deep into the mind of someone who believes self-mastery is a never-ending process, that the work is never, ever done. We're going to explore his mental laboratory, where he learned to transform his darkest moments into rocket fuel. By the time we're through, you'll understand his profound discovery. Potential isn't something you're blessed with at birth. It's something you must deliberately construct, day after grinding day, by winning the war within yourself. To understand the man standing on that stage, we need to rewind to the very beginning. Goggins describes his entrance into the world not as a gift, but as getting dealt the worst possible hand. He says everyone gets their own personal piñata at birth. Some are stuffed with wonderful things. Others, like his, are packed with pure nightmares. He was born into what he calls a terror dome, ruled by his father, David Goggins. His earliest memories aren't of safety and love, but of brutal beatings. He watched his father abuse his mother, his brother, and himself, over and over. This constant terror, what he calls toxic stress, carved deep scars into his psyche. He developed a stutter. Learning in school became nearly impossible. To survive, he built a protective shell around himself. He went numb. This numbness was his armor, a way to endure the beatings and hold on to some shred of dignity. But that same numbness clung to him long after he and his mother finally escaped. It became his default response to every failure, every setback, every racist insult hurled at him in his new life in small-town Indiana. By 24, David Goggins was the poster child for wasted potential. He'd attempted Air Force pararescue training but quit when it got too intense, particularly when facing his terror of water. That failure sent him into a devastating spiral. He ballooned to nearly 300 pounds, working $1,000 a month jobs spraying for cockroaches in the dead of night. He was, in his own brutal assessment, a shell of a man, with zero self-esteem, still haunted by childhood demons. He felt shattered inside. This is where Never Finished really kicks off. It begins with a man at absolute rock bottom, drowning in misery, knowing that if he didn't change course, he'd die a loser. In sheer desperation, he decides he has to do something he's avoided for over a decade. He has to drive back to that haunted house in Buffalo, New York, and look his father straight in the eye. He tells himself he's searching for answers, for closure. But during that long, silent drive, another voice starts speaking up. His whole life, one voice had always comforted him. "It's not your fault, David. Look at everything you've been through." It was the voice of justification, the one that let him stay comfortable as a victim. But now, for the first time, a different voice cuts through like a knife. Cold and unflinching, it says, "Roger that. It's not your fault you were dealt a terrible hand, but it is your responsibility. How much longer will you let your past hold you hostage?" That question hangs heavy as he arrives in Buffalo. The house looks the same, frozen in time, radiating dark energy. His father, Trueness, is charming at first, and for a moment Goggins catches himself laughing, wondering if the monster from his memories was just a child's exaggeration. But as the night drags on, fueled by whiskey, the old Trueness resurfaces. At a Denny's in the early morning hours, his father launches into his usual rant, blaming everyone else for his problems, trash-talking Goggins' mother. And there, in that fluorescent-lit booth watching his father's rage, Goggins has a crushing realization. He hadn't driven to Buffalo for answers. He'd come looking for a free pass. He'd come to collect more evidence that his failures were all his father's fault. He needed Trueness to be the devil, because if he was, then David had a lifetime excuse to be a loser. But staring at this pathetic, angry old man across the table, he sees the truth. His father was deeply flawed, absolutely, but he wasn't David's flaw. That second voice on the drive was right. Unless he took full responsibility for his own life, for the demons his father had planted in him, he'd remain a victim forever. He drives home from that trip fundamentally changed. He understands now that past traumas, our deepest wounds, can become what he calls distracting injuries. Think about a paramedic at a car wreck. They see a gruesome, mangled leg and might fixate on it. But while they're obsessing over the broken bone, they're missing the actual life-threatening problem, a blocked airway. For years, Goggins had been fixated on his distracting injuries. The abuse, the racism. It had blinded him to the things he could actually control: his weight, his work ethic, his attitude. He realizes the clock is ticking on his life, and he has to stop using his sad backstory as an excuse for achieving nothing. He has to take ownership. This moment births what Goggins calls his mental lab. His entire existence becomes an experiment. He realizes his problems aren't physical at their core, they're mental. So every workout, every study session to pass the military entrance exam becomes a test of mental strength. He's not trying to build a perfect physique. He's building a steel-plated mind. He stops caring about aesthetics and starts focusing on how much pressure his mind can withstand. Inside this mental lab, he creates an alter ego. He understands that David, the scared, shackled boy from his childhood, isn't the one who can endure the hell that's coming. He needs someone else. He needs Goggins. Goggins is the savage, the relentless force powered by the dark side of his soul, who absolutely refuses to be denied. David is the broken kid. Goggins is the warrior who handles the impossible stuff. This mental separation allows him to tap into what he calls the dark matter of the mind, all that unused strength and passion lying dormant inside us. One of his most powerful tools is a technique for neutralizing the past. Most of us are haunted by our darkest moments. We try to bury them, pretend they don't exist. Goggins does the exact opposite. He grabs a simple tape recorder and speaks his trauma directly into it. He describes the beatings, the terror, the humiliation in graphic, unflinching detail, and then he listens to it, over and over and over. He walks the streets with headphones on, listening not to music, but to the soundtrack of his own destruction on endless repeat. It sounds absolutely brutal, and it is, but something remarkable happens. The more he listens, the less power the story has over him. The poison gets neutralized. Fear and trauma transform into pure energy and confidence. He learns you can't outrun your demons. You have to face them head-on, study them, and convert them into fuel. He even starts doing this with online hate. He records himself reading vicious negative comments, creates a mixtape of pure hatred, and listens to it on his worst days. He realizes there's more fuel in hate and doubt than in praise and compliments. He learns to never waste a single thing, especially the negative energy life throws your way. This new mindset, this steel-plated mind, is built on a foundation laid years earlier by his grandfather, Sergeant Jack Gardner. After escaping Buffalo, Goggins and his mother landed on Sergeant Jack's doorstep. There was no pity party, no warm hugs, no comfort food. The very next morning, before dawn even broke, Sergeant Jack woke him by splashing cold water on his face. There was work to be done. Every single day, his grandfather left him a long, detailed task list. Sweep the porches, rake the leaves, pull weeds from the gravel driveway on hands and knees, wash the cars until they gleamed. At first, Goggins despised him. It felt like he'd just escaped one tyrant, only to be enslaved by another. It seemed like punishment. But slowly, over months of relentless, thankless work, something shifted inside him. He started taking genuine pride in a job done right. He found unexpected satisfaction in seeing a car sparkle after he washed it, in a perfectly manicured lawn. He learned that when a half-done job doesn't bother you, it reveals everything about who you are as a person. Sergeant Jack never gave him an attaboy. He never paid him an allowance. He was teaching something far more valuable. The world doesn't owe you sympathy. It owes you absolutely nothing. But you owe yourself the pride that comes from maximum effort. He was transforming Goggins into a disciple of discipline. That discipline became Goggins' skeleton key. It's what enabled him to lose over 100 pounds in less than 3 months and qualify for Navy SEAL training. But even with all that preparation, he was about to learn one of the most crucial lessons about suffering. During his second Hell Week, the infamous 5.5-day crucible of SEAL training, a massive 6-foot wall of freezing Pacific Ocean water slammed him into the sand. Panic flooded his system. The cold, his deep fear of water, the 130 hours of hell still ahead, it all converged into a single, overwhelming thought. I don't want to be a Navy SEAL. The dream that had consumed him for over a year was about to die, killed by a self-sabotaging impulse, born of shock and terror. He was half a step from quitting. But in that critical moment, He didn't just react, he thought. He took a mental knee. He took a deep breath. And in that single second, he made what he calls the 1-second decision. He flashed forward to his future. If he quit now, he'd be sent back to Indiana, back to dead-end jobs, back to being the man he hated. He realized the life he desperately wanted was on the other side of this temporary suffering. He made the conscious choice to stay in the fight. He watched another trainee, a guy named Mora, experiencing the same panic in the chow hall. But Mora couldn't make that decision. His emotions hijacked him, and he quit. Goggins learned that life isn't built on hours or days, but on the critical seconds you must win. When the pressure maxes out, you have to regain control of your mind in that split second and make a conscious choice, not a default reaction. This collection of tools, the mental lab, the alter ego, repurposing pain, Sergeant Jack's discipline, and the 1-second decision, carried Goggins through his legendary military and athletic career. But Never Finished is about what happens next. What happens when the war seems over? What happens when the savage gets comfortable? After the massive success of his first book, Can't Hurt Me, Goggins found himself in unfamiliar territory. He had money. He had respect. He was a highly sought-after speaker. And the day after Christmas in 2018, while celebrating his book hitting the bestseller list, his heart suddenly started racing out of control. He was experiencing atrial fibrillation, or AFib. He ended up in the emergency room, genuinely terrified. His previous heart surgeries had never scared him, but this felt different. He'd finally processed his past, told his truth, found some peace. And right on cue, life threw him a Merry fucking Christmas. A brutal reminder that it never takes a day off. They had to electrically shock his heart back into rhythm. The experience shook him. He felt his savage identity slipping away. He was still working out, but he'd become a, quote, part-time savage, a weekend warrior. He was maintaining, not growing. The fire was dying down. Then an email arrived, an invitation to run the Leadville Trail 100, one of the planet's toughest ultramarathons. His initial reaction was hesitation. His weak internal dialogue started listing reasons not to do it. His heart condition, his packed schedule, the fact that he hadn't raced in years. This is what the average mind does. It manufactures excuses. But Goggins recognized the softness creeping in. He looked at himself in the mirror and demanded, "Is this what you've turned into?" He knew he had to get back in the fight. He accepted the challenge and dove into grueling training, running 15 to 25 miles daily in suffocating East Coast humidity, battling dive-bombing birds and swarms of ravenous insects. He ran on empty, deliberately dehydrating himself, pushing his body to find energy where none existed. He was rediscovering the man who, when asked by a bewildered driver why he was out running on the year's hottest day, simply replied, "Because you're not." The Leadville race became a purging of his soul. He faced false summits, those cruel moments on a climb that trick you into thinking you've reached the top when you're nowhere close. He learned to stop searching for the end of suffering and embrace the struggle as the entire journey. Near the finish, a smug runner passed him and made a dismissive comment. In that moment, Goggins unleashed the dog inside him, that primal ferocity that feeds on disrespect. He hunted that man down in the final miles, not from anger, but as a reminder of the hunger he'd been missing. He was a savage reborn. But Leadville was just the beginning. It made him ask a new question. If 100 miles has become accessible to so many people, where's the new deep end? The answer was the Moab 240, a monstrous 240-mile race through the Utah desert. This represented a new level of fear, a fresh challenge. His first attempt in 2019 was an absolute catastrophe. His Raynaud's condition caused his hands to freeze, leaving him unable to eat or drink. He and his pacer went 15 miles off course due to a navigation error. He missed a critical thyroid medication dose. And ultimately, he developed high-altitude pulmonary edema, a life-threatening condition where his lungs filled with fluid. He was forced to take a DNF, did not finish. For most people, this would be the end of the story. But for Goggins, it was the launch point for the next mission. He refused to let it knock him down mentally. He called this the art of getting hit in the mouth. When life delivers a haymaker, you must absorb the blow and immediately re-engage. His race was over, but he created a new purpose. Finish the course anyway, create an ultimate blueprint of every mistake he made so he could return and conquer it the following year. He even went back out on the trail after leaving the hospital to run the final 40 miles, collecting data for his redemption. This experience solidified his foxhole mentality. A foxhole is your inner circle. His crew in Moab never lost faith. When he announced he was going back out, they had a look on their faces that said, "What took you so long?" He realized you must be ruthless about who you allow into your foxhole. You need people who believe in your quest, not people who give you permission to quit when things get hard. He trained for a year with singular focus, redemption at Moab. He was in the best shape of his life. And then, another hit. A few months before the 2020 fire season, where he was working as a wildland firefighter, his knee swelled up like a balloon. An MRI revealed it was, in his words, 8 ways fucked. His fire season was over before it started. This is where most stories would end. But Goggins's response to this devastating news was 2 simple words. Roger that. It's more than just order received. It means received. Order given. Expect results. It's an accelerant that bypasses overthinking and stimulates immediate action. He couldn't fight fires, and he couldn't run. So he set a new, audacious goal. He'd compete in a 444-mile bike race, the Natchez Trace 444, just months away. But then disaster struck again. The knee didn't heal. A seemingly simple cleanup surgery went horribly wrong. The surgeon, without Goggins' full informed consent, drilled holes into his bone in a desperate attempt to generate new cartilage. The recovery was excruciating. He went from running 200-mile races to being unable to walk downstairs. He was told he'd never run again. This was the ultimate test. What does the savage do when the physical is stripped away? He had to call the biggest audible of his life. He found one of the few surgeons in the world, Dr. Andreas Gomol, who could perform a radical procedure, a high tibial osteotomy. They'd have to saw his shin bone, insert a metal plate, and realign his entire leg. There were no guarantees. But it was his only shot. The doctor warned him that even if successful, he could do almost anything, he supposed, short of jumping out of planes. The surgery and recovery were brutal. But Goggins was relentless. He had to find his new 100%. He couldn't run, so he got on a stationary bike, every pedal stroke pure agony. 13 weeks after having his leg broken and plated back together, he rode those 444 miles in the Natchez Trace, finishing in second place. The fire of his ultimate dream, however, still burned, becoming a smoke jumper, an elite airborne wildland firefighter. It was the one goal that had eluded him for years. and it was the one thing the doctor said he likely couldn't do. But Goggins doesn't deal in likelihoods, he deals in outliers. Less than a year after surgery, he's in Fort St. John, British Columbia, a 47-year-old rookie in smoke jumper training, surrounded by guys half his age. He's beat to hell, in constant pain, his body bruised and sore every single morning. He struggles with skills requiring dexterity in freezing cold because of his Raynaud's, practicing for hours alone in the snow at night to overcome his weakness. He's not the best at everything, but he becomes the class leader, pushing everyone to be better. And then comes the day of his first jump, the moment of truth. He knows the landing could shatter his leg and end the dream forever. As he stands in the open door of the plane, 1,500 feet above the earth, he doesn't feel fear. He feels peace. He's gotten this far. He pushes out, his parachute opens, and as the ground rushes up to meet him, he braces for impact. He hits the ground, rolls, and feels a bolt of pain, but the leg holds. He's done it. He's defied medical expectations, defied the odds, defied his own body. He's jumped his first fire. As he floated down under that canopy, watching the fire below, he's overwhelmed with a sense of glory. Not for the outcome, but for the courage of the attempt. It's the culmination of a life spent refusing to accept limitations. He realizes the goal was never just to be a SEAL, or an ultra runner, or a smoke jumper. The goal was to wring every last drop from his soul, to discover what's truly possible. To constantly seek that thin atmospheric line between blue and black, the place where greatness lives. The work he knows will never be finished. And that's the whole point. What a journey. When you finish a book like Never Finished, you're left with a feeling that's less about inspiration and more about profound responsibility. The central message that echoes long after the last page is challenging. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Goggins demonstrates that the human spirit doesn't thrive on easy streets. It's forged in the crucible of adversity. So many of us, especially as we age and achieve some level of success, start looking for the smooth road. We think we've earned it. We build comfortable routines, seek stability, and avoid things that make us uncomfortable. Goggins' story serves as a powerful, almost jarring wake-up call. His AFib episode, his knee surgery, these weren't just random misfortunes. They were life-testing him precisely when he was most comfortable. He teaches us that satisfaction is a hop step away from complacency, and complacency is where potential goes to die. The real war isn't just climbing out of the gutter. It's staying out of the comfortable armchair once you've made it. But what I find most powerful isn't just his relentless drive. It's the practicality of his mental toolkit. He gives us concrete strategies for this internal war. The idea of distracting injuries, that we fixate on past wounds while ignoring present problems we can actually solve, applies to everyone. We all have a story we tell ourselves about why we can't move forward. Goggins forces us to ask, is that story a reason, or is it an excuse? His 1-second decision is another masterclass in emotional regulation. In moments of extreme stress, our instinct is to react, to flee. He teaches us to pause, take a single breath, and connect with our future self. To ask, if I quit now, what happens next? It's a simple, profound technique for replacing panicked reaction with conscious choice. And perhaps the most accessible tool is recording your own self-talk. It's brilliant for accountability. How many of us have an internal monologue filled with whining, excuses, and self-doubt? We'd be embarrassed if anyone else heard it. Goggins says you should hear it. Record it. Listen to it. Cringe at it. Then use that feeling to rewrite the narrative. So how can we apply these ideas today, without running 240 miles? Here are a few simple actions to consider. First, next time you feel the pull of procrastination, that voice telling you to skip the gym or postpone that important project, take out your phone and record yourself making excuses out loud. Then play it back. Just listen. Often hearing your own weakness spoken into the world is enough to shatter its power. Second, identify one distracting injury in your own life. It could be a past failure, a resentment, or a what if you constantly revisit. For the next week, every time that thought surfaces, audibly say, "Roger that," and immediately pivot to a small, productive task you can complete in 5 minutes. Answer an email, clean your desk, or do a set of push-ups. You're training your brain to stop living in the past and start acting in the present. Third, think about your foxhole. Who's the one person in your life who, with the best intentions, consistently gives you a pass? The one who says, "Oh, you're too tired, just take a day off." For the next month, consciously decide not to discuss your biggest goals with that person. Protect your ambition from well-meaning comfort. Never Finished isn't self-help in the traditional sense. It's not about finding happiness or balance. It's a boot camp for the mind, a field manual for discovering what lies beyond your perceived limits. It reminds us that potential isn't a fixed quantity we're born with. It's a dynamic force we can expand every single day through discipline, resilience, and an unwavering belief in our ability to try one more time. That was a deep dive into Never Finished by David Goggins. We've journeyed through the core of his philosophy today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary, no matter how detailed, can only be a map. The real treasure is found when you walk the path yourself. The true power of a book like this isn't just in the concepts, but in those quiet moments when one of Goggins's stories hits you in a way you didn't expect, connecting with a struggle you thought was yours alone. This summary is your guide to decide if this journey is one you need to take. If anything we've discussed today has sparked a fire in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning. It's an experience that can fundamentally change how you see your own pain, your own potential, and your own path forward. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new perspective, please do me a small favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep challenging ourselves and growing together.